Hello everyone, hopefully all of you are doing well. I was going through some resource types today, this morning, and I came across something that looked completely different. So I thought I might take a moment to kind of talk about how to keep up yourself with all the changes that's going on. And sometimes you will just go to some of the resources that you know, oh my god, there's some new features available, and that's just the reality of the cloud, that new things are getting developed and being added, being removed. So uh, it sometimes it feels crazy that you go and it would look so different. And one of the resource tab that I have seen a lot of changes in last probably 6 7 months, or say less than 1 year, is the storage account. It's just unbelievable. So what we'll try to do, we'll just try to go in there and try to create one storage account. Now, if you are like doing this for the first time, you may be okay because you just don't have any idea, what used to be the look of the storage account configuration. But if you are using the storage account for a while and you just suddenly come here, you may get lost. You may say, oh, that doesn't look right. So let's just try to do create a storage account. So if I create the storage account, you see this experience is still the same. Okay, then the instance detail, the top portion is still the name. You still need that globally unique name. So free store 101. Let's see if that's available. Maybe it usually gives you a tick mark to say that yeah, that name is available. Region is still good. Now over here, if you see, it says standard, and then you don't have any option to select for the account type. So it just says recommended for most scenarios, general purpose v2. Now if you have seen any of my previous videos where I have done and created the storage account, I have always said that is the account that Microsoft recommends for a very long time. And the other account types will probably be deprecated at some point, but it looks like the time has almost come. Now, the reason I'm saying the time has almost come is because if you can still get to the other account types by going over here, and if you see, if you need to create a legacy storage account type, please click here. So let's just do that. I'm going to open up in a new tab. So if I open up in a new tab, and I'll show you, this is what it used to look like, say maybe a month back or so. So over here, the basics, as you see, this section is still very similar. Instance details, they're also very similar. Actually, let's just try to put it into something. So free Azure RG, old free store 101. So here, if you see standard and premium, so if I select the standard, you still have option to select your account kind. And if you click on here, you have the blob storage, you have the storage general purpose v1 and the v2, right? So but now over here, if I select standard, it's just going to automatically select you the storage purpose v2, and you have no other thing to choose. Now if you choose stick with your standard, okay, redundancy, by default it gives you the geo redundant storage, and these options, they are now, you have a good nice description associated with them. If you want to go with the lowest cost option, you can always choose a locally redundant storage where your data will still be copied 3 different disks, but if a data center fails, okay, you'll be in trouble, but it's going to be the cheapest option. You have better descriptions for all of them. Geo redundant, intermediate option with failover capabilities in the secondary region, recommended for backup scenarios, so you know when to use it. Zone redundant, so it will be in one region but your data will be replicated in multiple zones. So if you have a data center level failure, this one would be something that you can consider, that won't be as expensive as geo redundant but still gives you protection against data center failure. Now the most expensive would be your geo zone redundant storage, where you are duplicating not only regionally but also by zones. And that's why it's saying optimal data protection solution that includes the offering of both GRS and ZRS. So you only use this for critical data scenario, and your cost is going to be the highest for this one. Now let's go back to the old one. So if we stick and choose standard and V2, if I click on this one, you have LRS, ZRS, GRS, then RHGRS, then GeoZone redundant storage, and read access GeoZone redundant storage. So you have 6 different options, which over here I think they combine into only 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4 different options. So most people probably they don't use the other things, whatever Microsoft figured out, and those are the optimal one for a standard storage account that are using general purpose V2. And now these are the options that you can have. Now let's make read access to data available in the event of regional unavailability. So this is what it's now included. So that is the reason you don't have to have the read access available anymore. So what you are saying, if you are using a GRS, okay, and if there is a failure, then automatically Microsoft will let you read the data from the other account that you have in a different region. So they kind of combine that read access and read access into this checkbox, so you can turn it off or turn it on. Now let's see the other thing. So if I go with premium, okay, so standard we kind of looked at it. The newer, this is a newer version. So with premium, I have now the option to select a page blob, file share, and block blobs. And this is I kind of like a lot, because this one you have really good description when you should be using some of these different types of account that comes under the premium offering. So page blob, which is the default, this is based for random read and write operations. You can also choose file shares. This is based for enterprise or high performance application that needs to scale. And finally you have block blobs, and that is based for high transaction rates or low storage latency. So if latency is important, you go with the block blobs. For read and write, you go with the page blobs, and if you have enterprise scale replication and scalability is required, you go with the file share. Now come back to the older version. So over here, if I go with premium, you see even with the premium you have account types, they look completely different, right? So they have storage V2, storage V1, blob storage, and file. Well, they kind of look the similar, but what they have done, so they have now simplified the terminology a lot. So page blob, file share, and block blobs. And over here, so file store would be your file share, blob would be your blob, right? Your block blobs, and then the storage is just combined into just page blobs. Okay, so this is what you have, and that will be like your storage and storage combined, and then you have the block storage and the file storage. But here you see there is no description. You need to figure out and understand when to use what. So this UI is more intuitive, and it's telling you, okay, if you use premium, these are the offerings and these are the things that you can do, when to use them. Now one thing to remember, when you go from standard to premium, okay, you lose a lot of redundancy options that you have. Like if you stay with the standard, if you click here, so you have 4 different redundancy options with you. If you go with the premium, say you are staying with the page blob, locally redundant storage is the only option you have. So you gotta figure out some other way to get the redundancy that is not directly available within the storage account. Okay, that is very important to remember when you are designing your solution. Let's see. So if I say I'm gonna go with the file share, let's see what kind of. So now I have at least 2 different redundancy options. Little bit better, so it's gonna give me zone redundant storage. So if my data center fails, I have another copy running in another zone, which is much better. but it still didn't give me a regional replication of the data. And what about block blobs? Okay, even block blobs, I have only two different redundancy options, but all the options that I have under standard, they're not available. So it's just reduced by 50%, right? So remember that. And let's go to the advanced. Now the advanced one, that page used to look very different as well. Like in here, let's see. In here, the advanced tab is over here. This is the older view again. Just remember, this is the older view. Here, standard, where you are still able to select this account kind. This is the older view. So this advanced view is in a much late. It comes at a much later step, and you have different things in here. In the newer version, your advanced is the next tab. Okay, and then you have security. Just like this, you have security. And here you notice here they used to have like two buttons, whether disable or enable. Now they have a checkbox to enable or disable a lot of different features, which is, you know, concise and better, yes, at least in my view. So over here in the newer one, you require secure transfer for REST API. So yes, I want that. That means HTTPS is enabled, right? So if you read that, it will say that HTTPS, okay, is enabled. Enable infrastructure encryption. Now this is an like a interesting one, I would say, because this Azure does your storage level encryption by default. This is like enabling and having double encryption on your data. So if you click on it, by default Azure encrypts storage account data at rest. Infrastructure encryption adds a secondary layer of encryption to your storage account. So this one I'm still struggling to understand what is the business case, because say if you want to manage your own key, you could have done that with the default encryption option as well. So unless you are in a super critical environment where, you know, you have to have double encryption to meet some kind of regulatory compliance, I'm probably not going to use this one, but you can. But again, see, this option cannot be changed after this storage account is created. Again, you have other options to enable Blob public access, enable storage account access, and the minimum TLS version, which I recommend you use 1.2 as default. And you see you have three different available. If you want to enable Gen 2, you have this. I think is very similar to the previous one. And if you want to enable large file share, table and queue, you can click over here as well. Now here is the enable support for customer managed keys. So some of this, you know, you actually have to email or contact Microsoft to be able to use some of these features. Like this one, you have to go there, and to enable the Microsoft file share version 3, you have to go through some steps. Okay, let's see. And let's look at the older version. So older version used to have, as I said, these multiple options. You just had to select one of these items to make it whether you want them or not. And again, they have checkbox, and previously they had these circles where you would have to go and you have to select either disable or enable. Alright, so next go to networking. Networking, I think, looked still the same. So over here, if I go to networking, it's still the same. Data protection, I think, looks completely different. Let me go back. Data protection. So this one is still kind of newer. It used to be there was no data protection as a separate tab, maybe 6-7 months back, and now they have a data protection in a very detailed way. They have a complete different tab for data protection, and that looks kind of the similar. So let's stay here for a second. So first one, protect your data from accidental deletion, and some of that over here for some. So over here, enable soft delete is enabled. So over here it looks like nothing is selected by default. Over here, enable soft delete for file share. Some of the stuff are enabled by default. and point in time restore hierarchical namespace cannot be enabled simultaneously. So here they are saying, okay, if you want to do some of this, you have to deselect some of the others to be able to enable some other things. So we may have done something in here that is stopping us from enabling that feature for the advanced data protection. So use point in time restore or more containers to an earlier state. Point must be enabled. So it's saying if point in store is enabled, then versioning, change feed, and the blob soft delete must be enabled. So if I enable this one, still I cannot blob. So and now okay. So it's saying hierarchical namespace is not supported. So what we did, we had to go back in here and we enabled the data lake storage, right? So let's go back and where was the data lakes? Here. So I'm going to get rid of this for now. Then if I come back to data protection, now you see this, you can enable now. So data lake, we'll talk about that a little bit more maybe in a different video. That is usually used for the big data structure or big data platforms, and it supports hierarchical namespace where you can have folders under folders under folders, and it also supports ACL just like you would do in Windows. So here you can do your data protection, and there are a whole bunch of configurations that you can use, and they are the same. Let's go to advanced. Advanced we already looked at. Tags and review, they are about the same. So there we go. So I hope you kind of understand that how different your resources can be based on when you are using them. So always try to keep up with Azure notification. Go to like Azure news feeds and pay attention to portal updates and updates from Azure, especially the newer things that are coming up and anything that they're changing, configuration that they're changing for various resources. Now, how is it and why is it important? Now I'm more like a security person, so to me it's very important if there is a process change in how you implement security, or there is a new thing that came up that would make my storage account even more secure. Okay. And the other thing, if you work in an enterprise environment, you will be using something called infrastructure as a code. So if the deployment of some resources, you can still do it the old way, but the new way is better, you probably need to rewrite some of your infrastructure as a code to meet the base standards and the newer features that now available and that was not available when you wrote your code. So there we go. So pay some attention to cloud, and that is something sometimes I feel frustrating, but sometimes I feel exciting because cloud is just moving so fast and giving you new features. I can do new things, but sometimes it's just a little hard to keep up with them. So do your best and always expect that something new will be added to the things that you're using. So always have an open mind to learn new things and do better with the cloud. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like it, please give me a like, subscribe, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.